And until we reach critical societies, we will be put upon by propaganda. And I want to give you an example of how universities generate propaganda. I have in my hand 2 full-page ads from the New York Times. These are ads that were sponsored by UCLA, a very prestigious university. And here's what UCLA says about UCLA. You'll notice their objectivity. You can't walk onto this campus without seeing there's a grand experiment afoot, a delicious conspiracy. From their first day, undergrads engage in critical thinking and analytic discussion as a collective process. They're drawn into the company of leading thinkers and doers they would never expect to know if there wasn't a research university in the neighborhood. They learn to understand, question, and defend 1,000 new ideas, including their own. Where were these students when I was teaching? Trade secret. The faculty love teaching multidisciplinary classes to a room full of brand new high-energy 4.0s. You can feel their passion for their specialty, their joy in missionary work, and always their search for those who will ask the great questions, see the connections, join the dialogue, and take their ideas to the next level. People around here don't seem to be focused on status or title. They're much more rooted in their ideas, fiercely competitive, and not the slightest bit concerned about who's on the other side of the argument. This is UCLA. Do you believe it? If you do, you are not a member of the critical thinking community. And it shows you that even high prestige institutions of higher learning are not above dishonesty if they can advance their vested interests by doing so. We have done some research. It took us 3 years researching 38 public universities, 28 private universities, in a study that was sponsored by the California legislature and was given to us to conduct of universities to determine the extent to which critical thinking is being fostered in university instruction. UCLA was part of the set of universities we studied. Let me mention just a couple of our results. We found that when asked the following question, is critical thinking a primary goal of your instruction, a secondary goal of your instruction, or neither? The overwhelming response from faculty members across the curriculum was primary goal. Primary goal. Now, in the second part of the study, they were asked, what is critical thinking? And how do you teach for it? Most of the responses were either vague or very, very partial. Like, I teach for critical thinking by teaching my students how to recognize their assumptions. Or I teach for critical thinking by keeping argumentation going in class. Or I teach for critical thinking by highlighting questionable information sources, a part confused with a whole. Or very vague talk. Now, another question in the close-ended side was, do students come to you with adequate intellectual standards by means of which they can effectively assess what to believe and what to reject. The overwhelming answer in the faculty surveys was no. The students who come to me do not have adequate intellectual standards. Question: do you foster intellectual standards in your classes? Universal answer, virtually yes. Could you name some of these standards and tell us how you foster them? That's a hard question. I know it when I see it, but it's hard to put into words. It's hard to say clarity, accuracy, precision, relevance, depth, breadth. How about those? Oh, of course, those. In other words, most faculty in higher education are not doing serious thinking about critical thinking. Most, like UCLA, will insist they're doing it, of course, from the first day. And their students are special. And they have a community, and it's a community of learners. And these learners are actively engaged. Let us not confuse the ideal with the real, ladies and gentlemen. You will never accomplish anything like the ideal when you say you're there already. Only by a realistic assessment, an honest appraisal, where we see how far we are from the ideal, that we can begin to practically, that is in a practical way, narrow the gap from the ideal and to the real. There are three modes of thinking that we should try to develop in ourselves. We should be idealists, so we have a vision of a better world that we believe in. We should be realists and see how far we actually are from this better world. And we should be pragmatists to make sure that what we do is a practical way to move from the real toward the ideal. So you can be any one of these. You can be a realistic practical idealist, or practical idealistic realist, or the third one, whichever that was. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you find in this conference that you are acquiring tools and strategies that are practical and moving from the real toward the ideal. But make sure that the strategies are grounded in a solid, comprehensive conception of critical thinking. You don't need a bag of disconnected strategies. You and I need an integrated, well-conceived approach to thinking and learning, so that if we teach history, we teach historical thinking. So that if we teach sociology, we teach sociological thinking. If we're economists, we teach economic thinking. And in teaching that, we teach students to raise questions in the field, gather information, come to their own conclusions, utilize concepts, trace out implications, and see the world from the perspective of the discipline. And then see the world from the perspective of another discipline, and another, and another. Good luck in the next 4 days. And we hope to hear from you and interact with you. And I hope that these are exciting 4 days for you. Thank you.